Officially called to order the Tuesday, February 20th, 2018 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission. As always, we'll start with the roll call. I am Brian Barabee.
I'm Jeff Bryan.
Chloe Stevenson. Rebecca Longbaugh.
Starting off this evening, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now hold a public hearing under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a notice of intent submitted by Alan DePietro for the proposal of a single-family home at a property located at Lot 1 off of Teal Road. Public meeting to be held this evening.
Good evening. How are you? I'm Alan DePietro.
That's why. There's a reason.
So I guess I'll.
Do you just want to give like a?
Yeah. Do we know where it is generally? Teal Road.
You do? Yeah. Yeah. Been out to the
Okay.
Yeah.
And so everybody's on that. I can show you. So Teal Road is the existing cart path where the drive's coming in. Brian, you've been out, and Rebecca's been out, and when you're out, it's a very limited site. So this is pretty much the only place the house was going to go. This is the only place the septic was going to go. Based on the wetlands, you had a bordering wetland here, a bordering wetland in the back. That creates a kidney-shaped area here, which is pretty much taken up by the entire septic. The garage, the house, the garage, driveway are in the buffer zone. Basically, everything's in the buffer zone, but none of it's in the resource area. So why don't I just read you what I've got here on the project narrative, and then we can discuss it a little more. So the intermittent stream that we talked about the last time is off the map. The wetland is the driving factor for the shape of the development. This project consists of a proposed single-family home and all the associated necessary construction activity that shall include but not be limited to construction of the house, septic, disposal system, utilities, grading, and landscaping. I got number one here. This project is located only in the buffer zone. No alteration of any riverfront area or other resource area is proposed for this project. Prior to construction, the BVW and the limit of work within the buffer zone shall be staked out per the attached plan. The limit of construction within the buffer zone as shown shall be marked with small but permanent markers to prevent future encroachment into the resource area. All construction materials shall be stockpiled outside the buffer zone and as necessary within additional erosion control barriers. All areas where sheet flow can occur shall have catchment locations constructed out of erosion control barriers to direct further runoff. Proper maintenance of the erosion control features shall be undertaken and sediment buildup shall be removed to a non-sensitive area. Check dams shall be installed to reduce runoff velocity if the flow to the erosion control barriers exceeds expectation. Rapid construction sequence shall be implemented to minimize disturbance within the buffer zone by limiting time and increasing capability of vegetative growth. Disturbed areas shall be loamed and seeded as soon as possible to erode a stabilized ground surface and reduce erosion and runoff impacts. A polishing basin shall be constructed as a temporary settling basin during the construction and shall act as a filtering area for driveway runoff after construction is complete. Driveway shall be graded with a high point to exclude runoff from Teal and a cross slope to direct remaining runoff into the infiltration trench. So it does drop off from the road. It'd be very unlikely that anything would be running off into Teal, but there'll be that, and then the rest of it will be shed to the side. The trench is shown on the plan.
Do you want to just point out the limit of work and erosion control?
Yeah.
I think it's signified there by a.
Yeah, so we've got X barrier line along here, so it's shown as proposed. Well, either way, it's along here. So it's basically following the back here, right along here, and that would be and then following the erosion control barrier up and clearly just to both sides of the drive.
Yeah,
So it's doing this. So,
And that's what this one is.
yeah, these are erosion control barriers, so these are shown in areas where there is a wetland close enough that's needed there, and these other spots, the runoff wouldn't impact it. Over here, this is the closest to the wetlands that we come, over here, and we could look at it, but it's well outside the 25. In fact, your old water resource protection district went right around there, so if anyone remembers what that footage was, do you know what it was?
No,
No.
no,
But it was, so even if that were still in effect,
Yeah.
it would comply even with the resource protection district. So that, in fact, that's at least a 25 out, and I think it was probably a little further than that.
You stockpile?
Anything that you stockpile will either be stockpiled either before or after construction of the septic there or in the driveway area, and most of that is actually outside the 100-foot zone.
What are you gonna do first?
It's usually labeled only because who's ever building it, they only look at the plan.
Yeah,
Usually
yeah.
there's something on it that says where it's gonna be.
Yeah, and what did we do? Stockpile outside the buffer
Outside
zone.
the buffer.
And that's really the only, that is really the only
Yeah.
area outside the buffer zone. But that is where the construction would be anyway.
Mhm.
You were,
I was just gonna say, what you got, you plan on doing the septic system first and then the house? Are you gonna do the house and the septic system in the same?
no, I mean, it's
Did you,
unclear right now, but except the groundwork would be done. So, you know, everything that's gonna require any elevation change, any movement of dirt is gonna be done. So that septic will be in, complete, and.
so you'll be able to put stuff on top of it?
Yeah, exactly. I would assume that's gonna be done.
And that's what these
These are the
additional figures-
trenches. These are the trenches for the
Those are
septic.
probably the backup system.
Yeah, so there's the
Right.
main, and then the
Oh,
others.
okay.
And then they're still all within, outside the 100.
But it
the 100.
still should be on the plan, whether you hand draw it or something, because what we all assume doesn't mean the guy with the construction is gonna assume where it's gonna be. He's gonna put it where it's most convenient for him to put it.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
it should be somewhere on the
So you
plan.
could add a note, like,
Just
Yeah, how
just
do
a
you want
note
that?
somewhere where it should,
Just right on the plan?
as long as it's somewhere on
Yeah.
there, because he's not gonna look at the extra writing, he's gonna only look at the plan.
Yeah, all right, well, how do you,
What did you call it?
The stockpiling?
The stockpile.
I mean, it's mentioned in here, but a guy on a backhoe or whatever isn't gonna look at this, he's only gonna look at that. So usually it's on the
Yeah,
plan
it's-
somewhere.
so what, I mean, what do you
Especially
want it on the
type
one
line.
that you're,
you can
No, on
try-
on this big one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's, so,
Is there a list of things that they
Probably.
need to look at? or-
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I would,
something
so
at the
here's
bottom
the
of the
erosion
note.
control over here, so it may be beneficial just to write it under,
Mhm.
just at the bottom
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
We can do that.
Only because it's a tight site.
Yeah.
This is the master copy. Is this the
Hmm?
master copy?
As it exists, yeah. Yeah. All materials to be stockpiled outside the buffer zone?
Outside the buffer.
And that's,
and I would just, for language purposes, it's kind of a formality, just put any and all,
okay, any and all
and then.
materials. shall be
Materials.
stockpiled. Okay.
Sorry, but-
Now we turned it around.
That's all right, yeah, it took,
Yeah.
but this actually kind of works. So we're coming in, that's a 100-foot well radius for these, right? Do we know where the buffer zone drops off?
Yeah, so the well's here and your buffer zone's here.
All right,
So here's from.
Well,
that's the,
that's the resource area. So this.
Oh, the buffer, oh, you're talking about the
Right.
buffer.
This
So the
is-
buffer's here, 100-foot buffer goes like this.
Yep, and then
Okay.
this little line is the 25-foot
Okay, so I mean, that's basically the one area that's outside, right?
Yeah, that's the outside the 100,
Is
and
where
you
it's
want,
gonna
so
be.
you were concerned was that the well was outside the 25?
I just wanted to see where, yeah, where it was in relation, so is that?
Yeah, so as far as that go, I mean, it's
is that- it's right
inch to
there.
20 feet. Oh, we have
I think this is your 25 right here.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha, which would make sense.
Yeah.
So the well pops in off the.
Yeah. And the well is inside the erosion control.
Okay. And the erosion control, is it just wattle or is it, what is it, double?
Double.
Double, there's a
Yeah.
bit around there,
Yeah.
okay, for
Yeah.
the tailings that come
Mhm.
out.
Yep.
Hi.
Have you had a chance to go through the Board of Health, all of those guys too? Or
So
are
I-
they starting here, do we know? Have they?
Yeah, so I've been down, I've talked with Bill Brookings, and basically what he had on record was a pre-Title V.
Yeah.
But he said, so long as you were happy with the area, you know, the details, they go on a different plan anyway. And so he just wanted to make sure at the end of the day, everybody was working from the same, you know, same plan.
Is everyone okay with hay bales as well? That was, I guess, the only other question in terms of erosion control. I think because of how close everything is, especially where the well is, I think it makes sense to do
Mhm.
that. And the groundwork in those areas. And there is,
And it's shown on here two alternatives, the fence and the hay bales.
yeah,
So whatever
Mhm.
yep, so it is
Whatever
still
works.
fenced too.
works best.
Actually, it's usually both.
Yeah.
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 I think in that area, the downhill is back into the work site. Right in that exact spot.
In the past, being in the buffer zone, we try to say avoid if possible,
Mhm.
which you're kind of up against it. One of the things we say to do is minimize, and we've talked, especially coming off of like Century Mill Road, the size of a house. A 4-bedroom house is nice. Because it's all within the buffer zone, a 3-bedroom house might be better. And will usually affect the size. Though you're pretty much okay to affect the size of the septic, but your septic's basically out.
The septic's out, and the
Yeah.
septic is for the 4,
Yeah.
it met all the requirements.
But we have in the past, usually if it's 100% within the buffer zone, we'd look for no real construction in the buffer zone, but we try to minimize or avoid whenever possible. That said, we have talked about the size of the house before, and if it's within 100% within the buffer zone, I think I'd look for a smaller house, a 3-bedroom house, to minimize the plan. It's usually what we're tasked with doing. Laura, I don't know if it's come up with you in the past. I don't know if you've seen anything along these lines.
New to me. New to you?
To say, I don't know that you've
Yeah,
been
no,
through
I've been
anything.
through this
Right.
this first time, so.
Or there's also disturbance as far as yard area.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Yeah.
very little yard area. I mean, the disturbance is, I would say, is a minimum. It's gonna be to clear the trees that are in the area where the house and the septic are going, pretty much otherwise would be no disturbance.
It's pretty much just the footprint of the house, right?
That's the footprint of the house, the garage, driveway, septic,
Right, so
and then.
He's just worried about the house, right?
Well,
Right,
it's
so
it's not within the resource area, which is
Right.
great. You get the
Yeah.
25-foot, but we have a
Right.
75-foot. So the whole house comes within
Right.
the buffer zone, which is what we try to avoid or minimize or somehow mitigate. I shouldn't say it's tough to mitigate. It'd be interesting to see how to mitigate because most of the land, there's nothing you want to try to get back. It's minimal lawn right
Right.
now as it is. There's a lot of wetland there. You're not going to try to cut up or do anything different with. So it kind of leaves us with minimize. How can we minimize the disturbance in the buffer zone? And in the past, that's one of the ways that they've
So
always
make a
done it,
smaller
is to
house.
look at the size of the house, saying if you're gonna build in a buffer zone, build small. That's one of the big few things I can remember. I'm looking at the erosion controls, it makes sense. I mean, everything's enveloped in. Again, the septic makes sense. They have to put in a reserve septic, so
Right.
again, it
Have any
seems to be
idea,
the only areas.
are you questioning that because you're worried about the square footage of the thing? Because it doesn't say what's, I don't see square footage on there. Do you see the square footage on there, what the house is? Does that make a difference? I mean, some of the bed, you know, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, you have 4 little bedrooms and 3 big bedrooms.
Right.
It's- I don't
Is
know.
that, well, actually, I think Brian was asking, is that the exact, is that the footprint? Or is that just a blob set in there that's?
Maybe with a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, you know, once the building
More
plans
places.
actually
Yeah.
come in, you know, the
Mhm.
foundation, there's a bump out here, there's a bump out there, et cetera, but
So that would be a
Right.
little later on. So in
Yeah.
other words, if this is what we're looking at right here, it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool, but then comes back with it goes something up like that.
yeah,
You know.
Right, well, it's basic, well, go ahead.
I think the well's driving the position, so we're never gonna go any
Right.
further that
Right.
way. And, you know, square footage of the house isn't, you're right, isn't proportional to the number of bedrooms.
Yeah.
You know, and so,
Right.
as far as the disturbance, I mean, the well's going there,
And that's where it's
everything else is gonna get.
Why is the well
disturbed.
going there?
Well's going there to be as far away from
Oh,
the
oh,
septic
okay,
as
yep,
possible
yep.
without,
But yeah,
Yeah,
the
they're
well usually
gonna
isn't
hit
an
both
issue,
property
because a
lines,
well is
too.
a temporary,
right.
Yeah.
it's a house, it's a permanent, so that's why, yeah, the well is usually, it has gone in places that you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, we
Like
gotta-
we're in
Yeah.
Craftsman Village.
Yeah.
But as far as the total disturbance to the site is gonna be driven by how far that well went back. And as far as the rest of the house is concerned, the vehicles to get around it are gonna be the same. And, you know, I don't think that reducing the number of bedrooms is actually gonna further what you were.
I'd
So I
more up
Maybe
in the
able
square
to
footage.
do sort of being proactive, and the commission can tell me what they think, because I came on the back end of Century Mill, so this is one of my first experiences with downsizing the house, or potentially looking at that. Would that be something that could be conditioned in terms of, you know, limit the square footage to X, so that it is so many feet
X.
away from the resource area? Because I definitely understand that, because the house is an impervious surface that's going in, so you're gonna have runoff, but it is engineered to accommodate the runoff, it looks like. And the well certainly does drive the placement, but I think, again, I'm not a contractor, but I'm sure you'd be able to minimize the house a little bit, the house structure, and you may still get 4 bedrooms in it. But I'm not sure if we'd be able to condition it to limit it to
Number of rooms or
number of
or
rooms
square
or
footage.
so much outside of the buffer. I'm not sure how.
Right,
to do it.
right. Because that's, I mean, that's the one I'm thinking of for most recent memory is Century Mill Road. It's those 2 houses that went in, which nobody was overly happy with the lots. The second house was held to 3 bedrooms only. Which again, it's probably a square footage thing, but if you see those 2 houses, you can tell one's not half the size, but significantly smaller than the other one. And that was the same thing, that 100% of that house was in the buffer zone. And it was really the only thing we could think of to minimize the project. Again, there was no place.
But everything here is outside the buffer.
No, it's in
No,
the
it's,
buffer.
it's
So
all
the
within it.
septic's
The
the
septic's
only-
outside, so the entire house,
Oh,
and for the most part, the driveway.
is inside.
Right, and basically just by the size of the lot, it's impossible for them to really put it anywhere else. The nice thing, again, the septic at least falls out, there's like one pocket out.
Yeah, yeah.
Which makes sense. I'm just saying on projects like this in the past, a lot of times we've asked to minimize square footage.
Square
as
footage,
being the
yeah.
only way we could meet what we're supposed to meet
Yeah.
as far as the bylaws
So
go.
we don't know what the square footage is, so we don't have any idea.
Correct.
Right.
So that'd probably be the answer to the question is,
If we can
What's
set
the
a
square
minimum maximum,
footage?
well, if we could set a maximum square footage,
Yeah.
right, to the, footprint of house.
I would think that would be the
Not to
question. That would be the
exceed.
answer to the question, not whether that's.
Square footage of the footprint,
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
the living space.
correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know, you wanna do a rabbit hutch in there and put little teen bedrooms all over the place. It's really-
As I see, you have to buy 18 rooms.
Yeah, I agree, but.
I would imagine there's language if we can pull one of those other ones. I'm trying to think, there was one in the past too when I first came on. I gave it was something similar. If we have language to be used as to size or footprint.
We can draft it and see. I don't have that offhand, but, and if you remember what that past one was, aside from Century Mill, although I'm sure it's on the Century Mill.
I'm sure I would imagine it is too. All those, that was my biggest question. The rest, like I said, I can see where everything was put in, why. I think the erosion controls make sense.
Yep.
They're clearly covering everything. That's kind of where,
Yeah, well, square footage, I mean, this is just a guess at what the footprint's gonna look like. You really need to see what the footprint's actually gonna look like.
yeah, and it's, roof runoff, which a lot of it
Yeah.
is covered. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
the plan talks about a lot of it, but that's just one in the past.
What's a driveway, just gonna be gravel?
Gravel, bitumen,
Gravel,
so
yeah,
it's
just
just
stuff
paved,
that-
whatever.
Drains,
Yep.
no asphalt.
No, I mean, it probably will be, like, I wouldn't imagine it. Putting anything in these days other than paving, it makes much sense.
Yeah.
So those were basically the questions I
Mhm.
had. I don't know if
Mhm.
there are other questions.
Does anybody else, would anybody who hasn't seen the property, I know Brian and I have, but would you guys like to go out and do a site visit to the property so that you're familiar with where everything's gonna go?
Are the corners of the house staked?
Could you stake the corners of the house?
Probably not in
Yeah, good.
any reliable fashion.
So as soon as that gets done, then we'll go look, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can do
We'll
that.
do that.
So if you go.
The
because
septic
there's-
system's staked, right? So that basically,
It's
you know.
marked where the
It's
pits
marked
were.
where it's
Yeah.
gonna be.
The trends.
So you could probably measure off of that to where the house is, or the proposed house would go. But the other, so,
Is the well staked?
That's another one.
so typically what we do is we do a site visit, and then we have to wait to receive the DEP number anyways. They haven't sent back their comments yet. So I think, we'll be able to draft the language and then get out on a site visit and then be able to,
Yeah, because if the well's not staked, the septic's not staked, and the corner of the house is most close to the wetlands are not staked, then we've never,
Yeah.
Be a nice tour.
Yeah.
those are common every day. That's what we look at.
Mhm.
but
Those
is,
specific items.
is there a day when everyone's available or that it works for you for a site visit within the next week or two?
Sure. Any day that ends in Y.
Can you do it after 5 o'clock?
Yeah, I mean,
In
if
the
it's not
dark.
dark.
It's actually, it's light
No,
at
it's, I was gonna say,
It's light
the
now at
night,
5.
yeah.
We can do that.
Sure.
So it'd be before the 6th. Does next Tuesday work?
Yeah.
Yes.
Does that give you enough time to,
Yeah, that'd be
getting
fine.
that stuff
Yeah.
staked out?
Yep, I can do that.
Yeah.
So the
That's
27th.
just common,
Yeah.
we always look at that, especially where it's a very tight lot, we always will look at those points. Because otherwise, we're just looking at a lot and have no clue
Mhm.
what's what.
Yep, no, I understand.
So after 5, sorry, what?
No, go ahead. After
Yeah.
5 is fine by
Yeah.
me. If that's
fine.
You know, like quarter after 5 or whatever, that's whatever
That
works for
works.
everyone. I mean, it's light.
Is it still light?
Oh, yeah, it
Yes.
is.
Okay.
I'm surprised actually how light it is.
I just, we were shocked the other night.
Yeah.
See how much it
All
really
of a
came
sudden.
back, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So we're waiting on DEP number. Do we hear back from Natural Heritage?
No, so that's not an overlay on this.
Perfect.
Yep. So what we would need from you as the applicant is just to agree to continue so that we can do the site visit, and then we'll be able to draft that language for you and then get the DEP number, because we can't close out without the DEP
Mhm.
number.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
And so it's next Tuesday.
Yep.
Yeah, so the
So that's
well,
the site
the
visit next Tuesday.
corners of the house.
Yep.
And if the septic is way out, we don't really need to worry about the septic.
Yeah, looks like it's outside.
But any other real close points,
Yep.
just pull those lines.
Yeah, we do the house and the well, yeah.
Anything else anyone else can think of, like those really are the closest ones.
So what time?
5:25.
You're driving the time there.
Yep.
That works.
4:05?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
All right, quarter past.
All right, so I would make a motion that we continue the public hearing for Lot 1 Teal Road till our next public meeting at a time to be determined. Here, a second?
Second.
Public meeting on
March,
March 6th, excuse me.
March 6th. yeah, at a time to be determined.
No church.
Got a second?
No church.
Rory, all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right.
And I'd like to understand exactly what you're trying to minimize.
Sure, we don't want anything within that 75 foot, nothing. We don't want the house in it at all. It kind of needs to go in it, so we'd like to minimize that. Driveway that goes to the 75 foot, we want to minimize that. Anything in that 75 foot buffer zone, we want out of the 75 foot buffer zone. Avoiding it is what we're tasked to do with first. If we can move the project out of the 75 foot buffer zone, that's what we're told to do first and foremost in every case. So then, if you can't avoid it, they say go to minimize, make it as small as possible, and then there's mitigate, where sometimes if you can cut back a piece of lawn that you can renaturalize, so you can take a different piece of lawn if it's possible. Those are the three things they tell us we can do when deciding if somebody wants to put something in the buffer zone. Those are three things we're supposed to go through in order to determine what we can and can't do. That makes sense.
And you're talking about limiting the square footage of the footprint of the house,
Yes.
for how does that accomplish your goal?
So that reduces the amount of impervious surface.
Right.
So that's reducing,
No, actually it doesn't. The roof could still be larger than that, but
Right, so we'd want to
Well,
see
that's
that
what
in the
you-
plan.
right, so that would
Right.
be in a construction plan or a building plan. Building, when you apply
Right.
for a building permit, that's when those documents would come before us. So if we limit the square footage, if the roof has an extended overhang, that's when we would say, well, you still have to come back then, or say we limited because of this reason.
Yeah.
I mean, people have put porches on, but without roofs, because it's still, all that water flow, it's normally hitting the ground, it's now not hitting the ground, so it's disturbing the soil, it's
all right, and so it won't be the number of bedrooms.
No,
I don't see
no,
how
it
you
shouldn't be.
can.
No.
No, that's only if we're
No.
talking about the septic system, which the system was outside
Yep.
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
zone, so I don't think
Okay. All right. Thank you.
we'll see you next week. I have to open and move, right? 2:58, open and continue
Oh, yeah.
at 7:30.
we met Lori.
Am I?
Oh,
Nice to
gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we were, no, we'll be, not, I wasn't at the last meeting, the meeting before.
Okay.
Well, this is,
You've been trading off meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been a winter.
that's February 20th.
Yeah. We talked to, or, well, let me open it first and then we can give the update. All right, so the Bolton Conservation Commission will now hold a public hearing under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation filed by Brandon Ducharme for proposed development, 258 Hudson Road. The public hearing to be held this evening, sorry.
Okay.
That's all right.
So, we have received an email, well, Ducharme Dillis had called me earlier after I'd spoken with our town planner, and our town planner had just basically updated me on the process, and it seems to be that they're closing out within their next meeting, or they estimate to close out within their next meeting. And that's the reason why Ducharme Dillis was waiting, to make sure that they had correct plans, and then they could bring any changes to us, to reduce the amount of paper and back and forth. Planning has basically briefly mentioned that the town planner brought up to me if we had wanted to propose any trails or any parking areas, like 1 or 2 parking spots to then connect to Danforth. So planning took a look at it and sort of said the trail would lead to nowhere aside from Danforth, and there's already a parking area. But they were interested to hear if we had any insight on that, if we agreed, disagreed, or would want to request trails. Also, there's not a representative here tonight because we had received an email once I spoke to Ducharme Dillis. As they're wrapping up with planning board, the inspector has a few items that they're still working out, so he requested their continuance.
That said, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 258 Hudson Road till our next meeting, March 6th, 2018, at a time to be determined.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So continued.
Second round.
It's a really good question with the parking spaces.
Was he gonna put some trails in there? I mean, this is where, this is one
We
with
might
the,
have some input.
this is
Yeah.
one with the lifeboat in the backyard, right?
Yes.
That you and I went out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, do we want to hold that thought for a second?
Yeah.
Do we have Jane Walsh here?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to come up and
Let's
talk,
go.
and then we can, yeah, since I don't want you to have to. Hi, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, hi.
Rebecca and I spoke on the phone, that's
Yes.
as far back as we go. So indeed, I am Jane Walsh, and I thank you for your time this evening to hear what I'm bringing forward. I live in Northborough, where I have lived for the past 20-something years, and I'm a PhD candidate in a conflict analysis and resolution program at Nova Southeastern University. I have a natural interest in the environment and preserving it and living in a way that reduces my harm to it. About a year ago, I was doing an internship with Sudbury Valley trustees, and as part of that, the focus of that was reviewing literature for effective methods, best practices for dealing with dog waste management. And the upshot of that was I could find nothing in the literature that had been tested. There's a published article from 2011, so stating that, a published article from 2016 saying, we looked since the 2011, there's still nothing in the sense of a measure was taken, something occurred, and another measure was taken. There's lots in the literature about who are dog walkers, what they're like, what uncollected dog waste does to the environment, and factors like that. Come forward a year, I'm now designing my dissertation, so my proposal is not in place yet. I'm meeting with my advisor on Thursday, and part of what I've been doing as I've been thinking about the issue is reaching out to see, well, I'm thinking these great thoughts, am I going to have any place to look? And I have a relationship with Northborough, and I have trails there. And Rebecca came to mind because she had expressed interest to Sudbury Valley trustees regarding their flag project from last year. So I'm bringing a conflict analysis lens to it, and it's looking at the uncollected dog waste as a precondition or a source for potential conflict, whether it's the land manager and land users, or the users on the trail visitors, what goes on there. Okay. I've designed several different projects as part of this journey. The first one I was very excited about, and I realized it's just not feasible. I am speculating that that's why there is this huge gap in the literature. It requires a lot of people, resources, time, and there are a lot of things you can't control. The weather being one of them, meaning it washes away the evidence. And here in New England, that's a real factor. What I'm looking at doing now is placing flags on consecutive days and asking the question, what sense do trail visitors make out of those flags? And what do they do with that information? Do they talk with other visitors? If there's a URL on the flag, do they go and visit the webpage? Do they post on social media? Do they just view social media? And by looking at all of that, my hope is that there'd be information there that would inform a land manager. I'm using that word loosely. A land manager who wants to flag periodically, and what should they focus on? Developing a web page. I'm not looking at, as part of this study, what that web page would contain. For me, that web page would simply be, the flags are a measure of uncollected dog waste. If you have questions, here's your contact person. At least right now, that's what I'm thinking, because it would confound what's going on if I start getting into norms and education, awareness raising. Additionally, it could inform land managers about, well, social media, maybe that's the place that some outreach could be happening in a formal way along with flagging. I'm working really hard to figure out a way if I can use this to measure, does the placement of the flags, and if I come back 3 months later and place flags, will I be placing fewer flags? I'm running into, what am I going to use for my baseline? What am I going to use for that first measure? Because the mere act of placing the flags disrupts everything. So I'm thinking, because that would be really useful information. Sudbury Valley trustees found they did their flags, and I showed up on the trail where they did it 3 months later, and I only found 3 waste piles. And I was like, I can't do a study here, there's nothing to count. And 2 weeks later, I get an email from them saying, we were out there today and we saw nothing. So they think it was the flags, but it's anecdotal. And it might have been what happened on social media that actually caused a reduction, and the flags were just a catalyst for that communication, or maybe it was something that happened on the trail between users. So that's the project that I have swirling around, and I'm investigating whether or not there may be interest here in Bolton, based on the fact that I knew that Rebecca had some interest in what had gone on with the Red Flag Project with Sudbury Valley trustees. So whether or not you have trails where this is a problem.
I
And
feel like
you're-
Bower Springs would be a great,
Yeah.
a great
Yes.
one too.
Yeah.
Well, as I understand it, what you're planning on doing is going out at a certain pile of time and flagging every pile of dog poop that you see out there. Whether it's been bagged and forgotten, or whether it's
Just
all
been
by
left.
itself, ignored or whatever, and then go back a month later and see if that
Now,
dog
is
poop is
this
still
specific
there.
Well,
to?
no.
Oh,
See.
no. So what I would
See if
do
there's
is,
less over time.
Oh.
I would flag for maybe a week and a half, every other day.
And then
I would
you-
just add flags
and count them every day. So you're gonna put 10 flags out there on Tuesday.
Right.
Go back on Thursday and you put 5 more flags out there.
Right, so now we have 15.
Flags. And you go out the following Wednesday and there's only 2. So
Now we
you
have 17 flags.
over a period of time.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna take them all up.
Okay.
We do it like monthly.
Well, then wait.
Well,
And then
I,
do it again, yeah.
And then she's
Take
saying,
them up,
wait,
bring
So-
them up.
And so on the flag, you're gonna have, on the flag, it's gonna say, pick up your poop or something like that on it?
no,
Yeah,
See,
just
and
the
that's-
URL, yeah, just to
there's lots of
make them actually have to
potential.
look it up, yeah.
No, what I'm hoping to have is just a URL or something that tells them where to go for information, basically to the web page.
Oh.
And on the web page, there'll be information about
On,
that this trail is being studied as part of a larger project.
don't poop
so
here.
information more about her project and her dissertation work.
Yeah. It's not even gonna say that, it's just
Yeah.
gonna say the flag, yes, the flag is in
Yeah,
uncollected.
like, don't pick it up, type of thing.
And that it's,
Yeah.
that
Pick up
might
the
be a
poop,
nice.
leave the flag.
Yeah, in the future, please.
Right.
yeah.
Right. So, as part of this, I haven't figured out the timing yet of pulling the flags, but I think on the last day the flags are there, I would begin to approach trail visitors to ask them by way of a written survey, did you see the flags? What do the flags mean?
Mhm.
Have you gone to the URL? Did you hear about the flags if you didn't see the flags? And ask them what they did with that information. And what I am undecided on right now is if I would have a survey that's just too cumbersome to get the open-ended answers. So I would make it more yes, no, and then subsequently invite people to a second part, which would be the interviewing, and sit down and have a conversation with people about that. So that might be the way to go with that. And then, 3 months later,
These lots-
Back, let's see if there's more dog.
take
Yeah,
my
it's
flags and I
again,
go back,
yeah.
who knows?
I mean, if this is agreeable to, we could probably do a public forum as well and have those same questions asked if you were comfortable with that. Or maybe the one-on-one interview works better for your research, I'm not sure, but.
So I would probably, if I did a group, would probably do it under the guise of a focus group. So I'd have to give thought to who would get invited to that and how that, but it could be
Sure.
along the same way. Do you have any sense of how many people go to the trails?
Well, a good estimation would be.
We've had
we actually-
conversations about this.
Yeah, we actually have, we have our wonderful Trails Committee that manages and maintains most of the trails as well. And their website does, I'm not sure how often the counts are, but how many visits there are to the site. And that would probably be the best estimate without
Okay.
sitting there and
Okay.
counting to see how many people visit the property maps. Because most of the time when you download it offline or you're looking at it online, you're physically going to the property.
Right, okay.
So
Okay.
that's probably the best estimate
Okay.
we have.
Trails. All right. So for me, I need to submit my proposal to my committee. I'm just giving you a rough timeline in case you're interested. They approve it, then I have to submit the project to the institutional review board, and they look at it from a human ethics, safety perspective, and then I can do it. So,
Yeah,
maybe
it's,
June, and maybe it'll be a dry summer.
Right, yeah.
It may sound strange, but, you know, just trying to figure out how much dog poop there is on the land, probably a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, no,
to
no.
have something to say, okay, you know, basically, you know, we got 10 pounds of it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I don't know whether you do it, what you do, but it's always a good idea that rather than just speculating out there
Right.
how much is really
Yeah.
being left
Yeah.
behind.
And so how I would approach it is I would have to define the area that I'm looking at. So it would be the path, and whatever I could easily
Well, the-
reach without going on to,
Like a couple feet on
Off
either
their
side.
side.
Right.
Yeah.
because I don't want to disturb any more than necessary, and
Yeah.
also defining the area. So that, your estimate would be based on that.
Well, the trails are pretty well marked.
Yeah.
around here,
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so.
It's ideal to a certain extent for the type of experiment you're looking for, Bowers.
Bowers Fifeshire is another one.
Yeah.
And I have
As
personally
opposed to
noticed a
around.
lot of dog waste on it.
Yeah, it's,
So,
every time I
I-
take my dog, I'm like, why can't anyone else pick it up?
It's always a good question. My thought was to, when you go to get a license in Bolton, that you give a DNA sample of
Oh,
the dog.
yes, yes.
And then take a sample of the poop, run a DNA test on it, and
Yes.
send the dog on a
Yes.
bill,
There are
Just nail it
places
down
that are
too.
utilizing that technique.
you know?
Seaport District in Boston,
They
the
do that?
apartments have done that.
That's
Good.
pretty funny.
Yeah. A much more contained.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. a little bit
Population.
However,
easier.
that would, give them a $200 ticket or something like that, but
I don't know, Rye, New Hampshire, $1,000.
really.
Last summer, they passed that. I haven't seen anything as to whether or not that's been
$1,000.
issued.
They'll be able to collect, here we are again, collection,
Yeah.
but.
That's part of the issue, lack of capacity to enforce. And then if you want to
Right.
operate carry in, carry out, it's a whole nother issue because you're not going to have trash cans on,
Yeah.
under that.
Well, leave no traces, but really.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Can you just repeat, I know you've already told me before, but can you repeat the name or the title of your degree and then the name of your university?
The university is NOVA, N-O-V-A,
Yeah.
Southeastern University. They are located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This has been primarily an online degree program. But I had to go down twice a year.
I can't complain about going to
I
Florida.
I know,
I hope it's one of
Nice.
those you get to go to.
February, that was a
See,
good
yeah,
one.
that's
That was a
important
good
one,
one. So
right.
all my coursework is done, and now I'm focusing on the research. And it's conflict analysis and resolution is the program, and it's a PhD program.
Sounds fantastic. I guess the two things I would say is, if you wouldn't mind working with Rebecca just on best management practices, and just our general thoughts on the trails, and just so she knows when you're going to be out there,
Yeah.
in case somebody asks, right?
Yeah.
And then it sounds like you're willing to share the information that you find.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah, 'cause it sounds like everything we're looking for, 90% of it, it's really useful to us. It's information that we cannot get, so we'd
Excellent.
be happy to see it.
Excellent.
It's just my initial thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm all for collecting poop.
I was gonna say, yeah, better you than me. Yeah.
Get somebody else to do it, it's
Yeah,
fine with
even
me.
better, sure.
The only other thing I would ask is,
Mhm.
you seem like you wouldn't ask anything obscene, but we would just need to see, or I would prefer to see a draft of the
Oh.
survey questions when you have them.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Again, I don't
Yeah,
foresee
no, no.
anything, but just so in case there's ever an issue, I don't foresee there being,
Yes.
but if there is, I can say, no, this is
Yeah.
what is being asked.
Excellent, excellent question. I will keep you informed as this evolves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank
And
you.
if it changes much, I'll seek your counsel as to whether or not the interest continues.
Okay, good. Well, it sounds like we're interested.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds like fun.
That sounds interesting.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thanks for
Oh,
coming
thank you
in.
for inviting me. I appreciate it.
I just, while you do this, are you gonna be able to track any other kinds of poop that is out there? Like, if you happen to see like,
Track it, no.
Bear
Be able
poop.
to distinguish it, yes. Like, okay, we're not counting that, but we're counting
but that's
this.
a fox and that's a
Yes.
possum, that's not a dog. And
Right.
you're basically interested in dogs.
Yes, because
Not
it's the
necessarily.
conflict associated with
Because sometimes
that.
when I go out on the trails, I see
Other
other
stuff.
scat that's out there, that's not necessarily
Sure.
a
Everything else.
dog.
And
It always
your
ends up at
point
the bottom
of,
of my shoe anyway, so.
You know what you're doing.
of being able to use the information, this is a very niche topic I
Yes.
find myself with.
Yeah.
I think
And
so.
part of what motivates me is, well, if somebody can use
We
this
can.
information.
Yes.
Oh, we sure.
We really
That's
can,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a concern around here.
Yes.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for
it was
that,
nice
too,
meeting
yeah.
you, thank you very much.
Thanks
for
again.
your-
Yes, good luck.
Thank you.
We're
Thanks very
really
much.
close.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how about a whole soup? Gotta be safe.
You can also have volunteer.
Yeah, no, I'm not volunteering for that one.
Come on.
Oh,
You're retired now.
I am, actually, yeah, something to do.
You know, gotta stay busy.
Right, there's one, there's another one, there's another one. Welcome right to my backyard, it's just loaded with it.
Minutes? You'll have a chance to look at minutes?
They're beautiful,
People happy with
well
minutes?
written, excellent.
All right, in that case, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes for our February 6, 2018 meeting as drafted and submitted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Who's saying, Jeff?
Sure.
Hmm?
You seconded
Yeah, I
it?
did.
Jeff, second, yeah.
Because I'm retired now.
Did you want to look at keys from real quick?
Oh, yeah. Apologize, I didn't bring this.
Get rid of that easy.
This is the best way to look at it, I think. So, I don't know where they would potentially propose a parking area. But what they were looking at was that it doesn't actually abut well, there's an easement here. That's open space that goes to Danforth. And I believe, yeah, it continues around the back here. So that's where it would connect into, but there would have to be, the way the open space is laid out, they were saying, you would have to create an easement through
To it.
property. Which, I mean, if that's what's necessary, that's what's necessary.
And where's the easement again?
So this is open space owned by the town for Danforth.
Oh, there,
So
okay.
this
Okay.
parcel and this parcel.
Mhm.
And then it connects into the larger area.
Both those, where's the pond for, on Danforth in relations to this one? That's where the
so
parking
here's
lot is,
Danforth
right?
Lane. So the pond to access it?
Well, the parking lot is right before there's two
Yeah,
spots right
so
there
that's
before that.
probably right about up here.
Just so we get my bearings.
And then there's the bridge. Right, so this is the water here.
So it would come into the trail.
So it would either, so the thought was, can we create a trail system from this open space or from this property to the Danforth open space area?
What's this?
That is
That
this
property.
property. So, two things. You could come this way. Actually, you know what? That may be, I bet you that's where the parking area is. But anyway, so
That's
you,
where the easement is.
yeah, so
Mhm.
this, you come this way, or you're coming this way and going into, and going around the pond area and everything.
And just pick up the trail at this point here.
Yes.
And the parking would be out here.
Yep, so that was the other thought, is if parking was needed, it'd be just one or two spots, so it'd be minimal. But where that would go.
I don't think you're, personally, I would think you're parking over here. This is, it's gonna be more for these people to be able to reach over here.
Yeah.
Kind of on the same idea as, the one off Sugar Road there, Powder Hill. Isn't there just a
Oh,
trailhead that goes in there to reach Powder Hill?
Yep.
Same scenario.
That's really- that's
Just
connected
something
to
for
it.
these people to be able to reach back.
So just really a trail.
Just more of an easement to get through there.
Okay. And is that something we would want to require, or something, because this is why they're asking about it now, is because it would have to be an easement through the lot. So they have to propose that now, and I would imagine put it on a deed as they're selling off the lots.
Mhm.
And was there any thought that, is there any way to connect this side of the open space to this, right? Because this is this lot, right?
Yeah, so that's what they had spoken about as well, as putting in an easement, but you'd be cutting through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all the back.
Yeah, you know, personally, I have one going to my backyard. And, yeah.
But you're right, I think you wouldn't have as many people.
I guess it depends on where the houses are. The houses are up close, and this is, you know, 200 feet way out in the
They're
woods
probably
somewhere,
gonna
and
put
they
them
don't even see
They're gonna
it.
put it in the
Because
middle.
They put some trees.
Yeah, that's one
You
thing,
know.
but,
Yeah, there's,
They plant, there's like, you know, trees all along.
because if they run it between these two, always run it out and then run it out. You know, if there's a way to get from the edge of the circle to this, yeah, to do two, to run between two lot lines there, and then at the end of the road, you know, another one between two.
What's the
lot lines.
red hashed area
So
there?
that's a drainage easement.
Okay,
So this is, there's a basin here, here, and here. And those are football fields.
There's a lot of a fire thing too.
what would be the
Cistern?
finish?
Oh, yeah, this is the
Be
system.
vegetated? Oh, it's
There's a
drain,
cistern
it's,
somewhere in there.
that's where the, retention ponds are?
Yes.
Is that what
Yeah.
they had there? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there was a way to have access here and then just cut
Mm.
behind this basically one lot, you know, the corner of this lot,
Right, which would include.
if
that
it's
open
already
space, too.
undeveloped space.
Actually, that may not be a bad option.
Right, it would kind of make a logical one too, it would include this open space too.
Right.
Right. Let me just, what block is that on?
so you're saying kind of this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a long lot anyway.
Phase two,
Yeah, so
yeah.
this is it.
It's pretty open space. Or even if it was open space and just cut through,
Along there.
cut
It's-
behind
it's-
lot one and the corner of lot two.
Okay, so here's a better, so it shows the infrastructure as well. So
Oh,
they're gonna have an easement up here. So it's,
but you've got all the
proposed
riprap
drainage
there,
drive.
right? And
And you
it's
have
pretty
trees.
sloped.
Yeah.
Could they cut through the open space and then just
So
come
this is
through
all
here?
significantly wet
Wet.
meadow,
Yeah.
so I would not
Okay.
suggest that unless you.
But up here, like above the riprap, you know, if it stays behind the tree line,
Yeah.
there's a way to get,
Okay,
Mhm.
yeah.
and it's probably a nice view, because that probably overlooks the wet meadow.
Above the
Yeah.
slope
Yeah.
too, yeah.
And then,
Oh, so
did we
you'd
see
be
where it
behind.
started? Yeah, it was right behind, because I can see this lot
There.
too.
Do I have,
This is the corner of lot two.
I don't think we have, no,
Yeah.
we don't have the line.
Check the first
But
page
yeah.
for a second. Just gonna see, it's- you can kind of tell, right?
It's just at the corner of lot two there.
Right?
Yep.
Mhm.
So, I mean, those are ideas.
I think
I
it's
bet-
always nice when you can get right on the trails from,
I think you're right, and I'm sure the
Yeah.
homeowners would appreciate that too.
especially since the other access is getting onto Hudson Road.
And
It's
then
not
come
like
back
walking
around.
on a back road,
Yeah.
you know?
I think this may be, like what you were saying, the most beneficial if you were to do it. Because you're going down an easement, it's gonna be vegetated with larger vegetation.
Mhm.
And you're cutting through right on the property line and then cutting in.
You're not going down the side of someone's property,
Right.
like all the way
And
down.
it's not
Down
two
there, yeah,
people,
right through
it's
their
one.
backyard.
Yeah,
And it definitely has to be done ahead of time. I don't know if anyone was, the one on Powder Mill, that was a nightmare as far as the signs
the
were
fact.
taken down.
Yeah.
And they were, yeah, it was,
Yeah,
I think people living next to it didn't like it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Only.
It
maybe cut across on this side too. In other words, if there's a place to park where you could get across, it gives you access to all of this,
Oh, that's
and then out to Danforth. You know, rather than having to come up.
There's no existing trails up in there.
No, you guys gotta get on it, we're waiting on you.
Yeah, I'm just
You're gonna send you
going to
out
rattlesnake.
Gonna get you
Some
20
driving.
gallons of gas and,
Got that
Sharpen that
weed
chainsaw.
whacker. It'd be nice to have all this open space here, that there's some access to it, and some sort of a little loopy thing that you could
Yeah.
we get you all the
go
way
there
to
up here and
Danforth.
then, you know,
Mhm.
go back kind of with a Danforth.
You're probably not gonna cross up here, because this is still wetland.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Here.
Yep.
Um,
Is this all wetland? We didn't get up
Yes.
this far, did we? We only
No.
were over here.
Well, no, we went,
No, we didn't get up
Yeah,
in
we
there.
came
We were
back
down
here.
like down, oh, where's this pond? There's a
Right
wetland. Yeah, that's where we were.
What
So-
is this?
so this is privately owned parcel.
Okay.
Let's buy it.
Work on that.
Who owns that, I wonder? Who knows?
Lavender.
Doesn't matter.
Wow.
It's landlocked, for Pete's sake, that piece of land, doesn't it?
No, they have
That's
access from
under-
the
Access
road.
over here.
They
That's
own
it.
Over here.
already large parcels.
So it's over and you access it over here somewhere, right?
Probably.
Great, so we can
So-
discuss this more.
Yeah, and just say, you know, if you talk to Brandon or them, see their thoughts, if they think that those are workable, or if they're like, no,
I
we
think
can't put
it's-
anything on that easement.
It
or,
sounded
you know.
like they were looking at, like, coming from over here, crossing lots and going that way.
I seem to remember that, right.
I mean,
It might make their lives easier too, just to have the one easement on the one.
And again, if the houses are close to the street, and there's a lot of woodland behind them, then that's fine.
Yeah.
I know the lots, I don't know which side, but there's one side where it's sort of like DiPietro was talking about, where it sort of drops off and then comes up. So those houses won't be right next to the road, they'll be a little bit further back. Just because grading wise, they can't do it.
Just wanted to see that riprap again. That was, sorry. And that's the edge of the drainage easement right there.
You could
Yeah,
do
there
something
should
along
be
there,
some room in
should be
there.
some room there.
A teeny bit.
Yeah, well, you don't need much
They
to
could,
just,
they could tweak this too, maybe, bring that out a little more.
yeah.
I was thinking it
Because
comes
that's
just
just
right in
making
on
use
the
of the road.
access that's
Yeah.
already there, and then cut off.
Oh, this isn't, I thought this was all riprap here.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
no,
oh,
it is.
oh, okay.
That's a road, that's their access road
Oh.
into
Oh,
it, and then
That's
this is,
perfect.
yeah, it kind of ends
Okay.
at wherever that riprap
Got it.
is.
Okay, I thought that was all like
The
stone.
yeah, kind of, yeah,
Okay,
so,
got it.
That makes sense.
just a thought, we will see them soon.
Yeah, It's a nice piece of land up there, that's for sure.
Upcoming meeting dates?
Uh,
Do you want to go ahead and catch up if you want?
Yes, so March 6th,
Yeah.
if everyone's available. We had a request from the town planner to have the March 20th date. And aside from a continuance, we don't have anything that's out that far yet. We received one application today, so that will be on the March 6th agenda as well. So unless anything is continued, there's nothing planned for the 20th.
She wants us to move that one, or?
Well, yeah, to either move it, if possible, if not, they'll figure something out.
Move location or move date?
Move date.
Okay.
But, so that's one potential error with that, but then into April, the 3rd and 17th, does that work for everyone?
I think so.
The 3rd does, yeah, the 17th right now, yeah. It might change, but right now, yes.
Okay.
When is school vacation?
I think it might be that week.
I feel like yes.
I think it might be that week.
Well, we may not even have applicants, so we can just tentatively plan it and hold it, unless a different day of the week works better, or,
I would
Yeah.
say tentatively book that week, and then we'll let you know.
This is the week of the
17th.
17th. But March 6th was still here, right?
yes.
Correct.
And then what do you think about the 20th?
I mean, if we don't have things stacked for the 20th, I don't mind moving it.
Okay.
Is it possible to do a different day of the week, or do we have to then move
That's
the whole
something
week
else to look at
forward?
as well.
Okay.
We don't have to move a whole week forward, it's just typically, the commission's done the 1st and 3rd week.
Mm-hmm.
So it would actually be beneficial if we didn't change weeks, because keeping on that schedule of expectancy, but also there are other boards that do the Tuesdays that are 2nd and 4th.
Mm-hmm.
I think Wednesdays are fairly open, I would have to double check that.
Would that Thursday work, the 22nd?
The Thursday, the 22nd, I can double check to confirm it, but that's a possibility. Would everyone be
Yeah.
available?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
As of now, yes.
Alright. So the 22nd, yeah. So we'll tentatively do that. I'll send out an email tomorrow to confirm, once I can take a look at all the other department schedules. Yeah, okay.
Do you have any good mail?
Oh. Good mail is a relative term. It's nothing bad.
That's a plus.
So we received mail from Beaver Solutions, who does our work. And it's looking to renew the contract, or the, maintenance plan renewal, which is yearly. So this just basically describes what they do. They unclog the flow devices. They're basically the culverts with the gauges that you've seen throughout different properties. And also they noticed on here to discuss the status of the Fifeshire spillway. So we took a look at the spillway because there's increased beaver activity there, but there's still good flow through the beaver solution that's there. So just looking at, can we do anything to basically decrease the impact to the infrastructure that was put in that he can do, or is it something we have to sort of outsource beyond him to look at? But aside from Fifeshire, it's just what he's been doing every year.
And he was new to you. We've been using him for a long time now, but comfortable, happy.
Oh, I think he's great.
He's all right. No, that's what we had in the
I
past.
think
We
he's
didn't have
great.
issues.
I put my boots
All
on,
right.
so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, the Beavers feel about this, Gary.
Yes, I don't
They're
think
fine.
the
They're
beavers
not
like
culverts.
him.
I don't think they mind.
Does anybody have any idea how many actual beavers actually live in Bolton?
Well,
I think we should start tagging them.
Yeah,
You
I'm
can
nothing else to do.
Like that, yeah.
That'd be a good idea, actually, to figure out how
Get a paint
many,
gun and you can
how many
spot
are
them.
there,
Paint guns.
and how many of them poop on the
Paint
trail.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to have an account,
It would
so that
be.
you
yeah,
know.
so what you can do, and I've started doing to the best of my ability, is looking at how many lodges there are. So
Yeah.
each lodge, there's at least 2.
Yeah,
At least 2, because they mate for life and they pair. The issue is,
no chain migration or anything like that.
well, then you have to look at, they mate in a pair and they'll stay in the lodge, and then you have satellites when the kits go off, and
Do they
At
stay
their
at
own
night?
care.
Yeah, it'd be
They
interesting.
typically colonize a little bit, but then when they abandon the lodge, that's when they've moved on or somebody's killed them. So to the best of my ability, what I've been doing is just when I see a lodge, in my
Okay.
mind it's 2.
Yeah.
Because without following how many babies there
Tell me
are.
why.
Actually in there, yeah.
So how many lodges have you seen?
A lot.
A lot.
Probably at least 5 that have been here for a very, very long
I
time.
should tag those. Just,
Well,
it'd be interesting.
my
It's a-
predecessor has tracked where the lodges are, abandoned lodges, dams, so I'm trying to keep up with that, film the new ones.
It seems like that dam over at Von Hill that I'm very familiar with, it seems like that's a lot of work for 2 beavers.
Well, it's funny that, so when I'm, again, to the best of my ability, it's not, if you look at the topography of the land, it's not actually, when you stand next to it, it looks like it's 6 feet tall. It's not actually 6 feet tall
No.
because
It's
that's
just
all
a-
ground there.
Yeah, right.
It is though substantial. There's, again, at least
It's a
2
lot.
working on that.
There's a lot of work going on in that.
Yeah.
They have nothing else to do all day.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
They're retired.
Yeah.
Part of it.
I didn't get you either. But is everyone okay with
Yeah.
this? That we,
We have the money?
yes, we
Good,
do.
good.
This is what we budgeted for.
Good.
Yeah. So that's really it.
Wow. He's gonna do an easy day. Anybody have anything else? Sure. No? Spoken word, poetry, anyone? Alright. I'd like to make a motion that we hereby close the Tuesday, February 20th, 2018 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission.
Second.
All those in favor?
I
Aye. So closed. Good night for Access TV.